And I've realized as I've done this that I didn't introduce myself. So quick introduction to me. I'm Pia. I am the CEO of the Consortium for Street Children. And I think I know many of you who are joining us on the call today. So a little setting of the scene. Why are we doing this session looking at trust building and law enforcement? Well, it's a key issue for children who live and work on the streets or are otherwise connected to the streets. It came up in the strongly got highlighted when we did consultations 5 years ago with over 1,000 children that led into the UN guidance. It was a key issue that children raised, and it's a key policy issue that we continue as an organisation highlighting. Some of you might know that we've done a mapping globally based on issues that children raised as areas of policy concern, and we've mapped laws around particularly around status offences, so criminalising children not for the act but for who they are or where they are, for instance begging or loitering, but also police roundups is obviously a key issue for children who we work with as a network. But it's also because we just get regular feedback from members of our network around the challenges in working with the police and other law enforcement agencies, and some very, very searing reports of the abuse that children can suffer at the hands of the police, mental, physical, sexual. And sometimes there are very easy safeguards that could be put in place which would really reduce that risk. But it's something that really concerns us. And as we learned last year, this, in this first session we did on this at last year's Network Forum, we have really great examples in our network of organizations, not huge organizations, not hugely well-resourced organizations necessarily, who are doing very well-focused, effective work to build bridges and engage with the police. And that was really part of what led into wanting to do this session. Yesterday, we had our keynote session with Cedric Foussard, who is the coordinator of the Global Initiative on Justice with Children. And he really set us up talking globally about initiatives to try to make police policies more child-friendly, etc. So we've got a lot of presentations to pack through. I don't want to talk more. What I'm going to do now is to pass the controls. I'm going to pass the controls on to Meinhard, who is sitting in Tanzania. And he would like you, as we get that set up, I'd like all of you to put, when Meinhard says go, wait until he says go, I'd like everybody to put in the chat the country that they are either in or from, whichever they think is more interesting. So Meinhard, if you are ready for that, tell everybody that they can go. I'm passing over to you, Meinhard, and looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Pia. So yes, as you can see, there is a question on the screen, I hope. Are you able to see that, the big map?
Yep.
Yeah, good. So just type in the town or city that you're in and the country that you're in into the Zoom chat, and we can get a picture of where everyone is calling in from. And like Pia said, if you're in a place now, but it's not your original place, and you think your original place is way more interesting, feel free to put that in as well. I can see we've got a nice spread of people, obviously a good number from the UK, but I see West Africa, East Africa, Philippines coming up. So just type in the town, the city you're in, and the country you're in into the chat, and it should all pop up onto this screen. Give it another 1 minute, 30 seconds maybe. Lots of people from the UK. I see Durban coming in. Good. Let's stop this for now and go to the real presentation that we wanted to do. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Meindert, and I am the Executive Director of Amani Center for Street Children, Tanzania. And I'm here together with our Amani social coordinator, Danielle Temba, to give a stick to the time about some of the strategies that we use as organization, as the slide says, sneaky strategies to win police hearts for street kids. So in the next 12 minutes or so, we'll try to run through it. I hope it will be fun as well as useful. But I'm sure many of you ask yourself, why bother? Is it even worth it? I know Pia said it's so important that we do it, but I think we also all know working with the police is not always easy. And it may also not always be successful. So one big question is, what are the benefits? How much will the children get out of it? How much will you as NGO get out of it? And again, I would like to quickly swap screens and ask for your inputs there. Let me stop this map and move to the next one. Why is it good to collaborate with the police? And I would love to just get a couple of ideas into the chat. Why is it good to collaborate with the police as NGOs working with street-connected children? Let's go into the chat, just type a single sentence or some words or some phrases. Why is it good to collaborate with the police? I see Sue saying to change attitudes and prevent children from being arrested, to prevent harassment. Very good. Avoiding abuse. Very true as well. To enable a better understanding of the children's needs and to protect them. All very true. To secure your organization, that's an interesting one, and to make the whole environment for street children much safer. Yeah. To help protect the children and make sure that police protect them and not harass them. Yeah. So I think these are some really, really powerful points. I see Sean saying police are frequently the ones who violate the rights of children. Yeah. So I think your points are all very valid and somewhat similar to what we came up with quickly as Amani. Why is it even worth it? Yeah. So one is change negative practices and perception. I think we're all acquainted with that at least reduce a lot of those rights violations. And our experience is that the more you work with them closely, the more they slowly change their tone from often confrontational to much more child-friendly, and from criminal to just children in need of care and protection. And it has helped us tremendously with all sorts of referrals. So children may be found on the street by the police, brought to Amani. Children may be caught for some pet crimes, and then instead of being prosecuted, obviously not just helping our organization and some individuals we rescue, and we rescue early on, the fewer of them may end up in serious criminal activity. So it will help to prevent future crime levels. But if we all agree that working with the police is important, then you need a smart strategy. It's not enough, and we've learned that over time, it's not enough to just occasionally, in a rather unplanned way, do things with the police. It just won't get you very far. So in the next couple of minutes, we hope to share 7 distinct tactics or almost courtship practices that we have used in Amani, some of them extensively, some of them just very recently, to help build positive relationships with the police. And here is number one. In a way, working with the police, you need a game plan because it is almost like a game. You need a strategy. You need to know who the players are. Yeah. What does the playing field look like? Yeah. And that means you need to sort of find out who are the different groups of police as a horizontal mapping. As in the case of Tanzania, you've got the gender desk police, you've got the central police, you've got sort of an assistant police force called Ngambo at the ward level. All these groups can be important. And then, of course, also vertically, all these individuals can be important, both the frontline police on the streets and behind their desks, as well as their superiors and their top superiors. And that's one thing that we learned the hard way, and actually only rather recently, because in Tanzania, whenever we talk about children, we are being directed to the gender desk, yeah, which is the women and children's desk of the police. And automatically that made that we would work with the gender desk only. But a couple of months or maybe a year ago, we realized that's not enough because the gender desk police, they keep office hours, work days only, don't go out into the field, or at least not so much into the streets. They may go to certain cases that they deal with. So you need the other parts of the police to also work with them, and you need to engage the people higher up in your players is definitely tactic number one. Daniel, over to you. You may need to unmute yourself. Daniel, we're not hearing you. Okay, let me take over for now. Hopefully Daniel will join soon. So the other that we have found out is bonding with the badges, bonding with the police is almost like daily exercise. Yeah, you can imagine running on a conveyor belt 2 times a year is not really going to help you to get fit. And in a way, it's similar to working with the police. Yeah. You need to exercise with those police on an almost daily basis. And what we do as Amani is that, for example, our street outreach workers, every morning, they go and visit the police gender desk. They get into the office, they hear any updates, they meet with the police. They are part of the handovers from the nighttime police to the daytime police whenever there is any child case that came up during the night. So every day, our Amani outreach workers are there with the police, visiting their offices, interacting with them. We also try to make sure that wherever possible, we invite police to our centers and to any special days or celebrations that we have. So the whole point is, if you want to, as this picture says, bond with the badges, you really need to make it almost a daily practice. That is tactic number 2. Then tactic number 3, and it's a very powerful one we've learned, is as much as possible, let the police commit publicly. So can you get them the microphone and speak out in public and say, as this picture says, yes, help street children always. Why? Because doing so puts pressure on them. Yeah, it makes them commit in public. It inflicts that pressure on themselves. And you can then use that community and the audience as leverage to make sure that they live up to whatever they promise. So as Amani, what we try to do is about 4 times a year in each of the locations that we work, so about 12 times in total, we run community meetings where we engage local community members from around the hotspots where you can find a lot of street children, as well as social welfare, as well as police, and we try to do it in their police hall. Yeah, and the big benefit of that is that now, because you're doing it in their police hall, they feel like they are hosting it. Even if we as Amani are doing most of the work, it's like the police feels ownership over these community meetings that are all about how can we help these kids. Yeah. So they would welcome people in, they will give a speech, they will close the session as though it was entirely organized by them. And that again makes them take ownership over the issue of street children. And again, it's also about inviting them to the International Day for Street Children and let them speak, inviting them to the Day of the African Child and let them speak and engage the media, so that they get publicly linked to helping street children in a positive and collaborative way. Let's hope Danielle is available on audio now. Danielle, can you take over? No, unfortunately not, it looks like. So let me try to continue this one as well. So another tactic is, as much as possible, try and create feel-good moments between the police and the children. Yeah. So get children into your centers. Let them interact with the children. Let them, maybe as we do, engage in our life skills sessions, run sessions about good behavior, bad behavior, theft, get the traffic police in to explain about traffic rules, talk about substance use together. As much as possible, let children and police talk and discuss and meet and even play games together, so that you slowly start building comfort levels in both directions. Children feeling more comfortable with the police and police feeling more comfortable with the children. So as much as possible, try and build those kind of moments throughout the year. And again, if we have our end of primary school graduation party, get the police in and be part of it. Let them see the children playing acrobatics. Let them see that these are children like any other children, and actually many of them are amazing personalities. Yeah, so that is tactic number 4, to build as many feel-good moments as possible. Then tactic number 5, roll out the red carpet. Here are the police Oscars. Why is that important? Why is it important to smartly shape the police through showering them with applause and awards? Well, I think we all know some of the children we work with are not very easy in their behavior. And one of the most powerful ways to change their behavior of the children we work with is positive reinforcement of challenging behavior, of good behavior, the opposite of their challenging behavior. And the more you do that, the more the child will grow into using that positive behavior all the time. And in a way, that's also similar to how you can shape the behavior of the police force. The more we shower them with praise, the more we applaud them, the more we celebrate good police, the more we will also slowly turn the police force towards the positive. So a couple of things that we do. Whenever we see a police that's doing reasonably well, we try to make sure that they have an Amani t-shirt, an Amani polo, with slogans on it, like "Street children deserve a future," or "It is everyone's responsibility to help street children." And actually this year, which was inspired by last year's consortium's network forum, we held a very public recognition recognition ceremony for good police, where we asked our children, who is a police that is actually helpful and friendly to you? So children nominated good police. Then we had a beautiful framed certificate that we gave them in public with a lot of media attention. And again, to make them feel ownership over helping these kids and slowly move the entire police force towards that type of positive behavior. Then I'll just continue, assuming that Danielle, unfortunately, is not on audio. Tactic number 6, and it's something that we are not yet. You are back, Danielle?
Yeah, Danielle? I see I'm back.
Okay,
so if we continue to tactic number 6, thank you, Minded. We mean like train and educate the police about street children. As Amani, we have only directly trained police through our community meetings and community workshops in which police participate. But we are now exploring on how we pay more specific attention to training the police themselves. At the moment, together with real children and consortium for street children, we are exploring on how we can get dedicated training module about street children into police curriculum in the police academy, especially here in Moshi. And we would love to hear from maybe others on this call and others in the Consortium for Street Children Network who are already good progress in this. Because we know that some of you are well ahead in this. And so this is an early stage work in progress for us, but obviously very important. But if we can build a better understanding and more empathy for children in the police, this will be immensely impactful, especially in building trust between police and children.
And then the last tactic, cook up joint ventures. And again, this is one that we've only recently gotten a little better at. But obviously, the more you work together hand in hand, the more you will learn from each other and the closer you grow. So one tactic is to try and come up with as many joint projects related to street children to then implement together. So 1 or 2 examples. We have recently opened a drop-in center for street children very close to the main open market here in Moshi, and are building a street children community volunteer network in that hotspot. And we are trying to actively work with the police to be part of those drop-in center operations, but also to have some of these police be assigned as street children community volunteers together with other community members to be our assistants in helping these children as Amani NGO. Or another example, which is actually not ours, but Railway Children's. I know that Railway Children, I believe in Wansa, maybe even in Dar es Salaam, together with the police and with social welfare, run a child protection booth at the main bus stand. Yeah. So these are examples where the more you work together, the more you will learn together, the more the police will start to help these kids.
Thank you, Daniel and Mindheart. You've been spot on time. Daniel, I'm so sorry that we had challenges with your audio, and you've done a perfect segue, Mindheart, into the presentation as you referred to some of Railway Children's work in Tanzania. So I think Lauren is just getting up the presentation for Railway Children. And Rose, maybe you can take us away and move on to the next presentation.
Mindheart, could you just stop sharing and then I should be able to?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pia. As introduced, my name is Rose Kagoro. I'm the Advocacy Manager at Railway Children Africa. And my presentation is going to complement what has been shared by Amani, but also give a examples of different strategies we use to engage with police officers, both at national level, but also at district level, to build trust between us as an organization and the police force, but also between the children and youth we work with and the police officers. Next, please. So before doing that, I would like to give a very short introduction to Rero Children Africa. We are a non-governmental organization dedicated to supporting street-connected children and youth in Tanzania. And presently, our direct implementation work is focused in 2 regions of the country, that is Mwanza and Dar es Salaam. Previously, we also used to provide technical support to various civil society organizations that we are collaborating with, including Amani. So we are happy to be joined by them in this session today. And our work is focused on 4 key areas. One is protecting vulnerable children. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. One is protecting vulnerable children and supporting their families, but also we work around strengthening the community response towards protecting street-connected children. We also strengthen or contribute in strengthening child protection system and policies with a focus more on the rights of street-connected children. And lastly, we work in building the body of evidence around the work that we do in order to back up our advocacy efforts. So in Tanzania, as Mindat has highlighted, issues of gender-based violence, but specifically child protection issues, are handled through the police gender and children desk. And this unit was established within the police force to ensure a more effective response towards child protection issues within the country. But one would ask why us as Rero Children Africa, we are more interested in working or collaborating or building trust between us and the police force. One, there are several comparing reasons, but the primary one being the high vulnerability experienced by the group of children and youth that we work with, that most of times places them either into contact with the law or into conflict with the law. But also we see there is a very high need of enhancing the capacities of police officers to provide compassionate response toward child abuse cases, but also when engaging with street-connected children and youth. And lastly is the need to coordinate services to victims and survivors of abuse, particularly street-connected children and youth. Next slide, please. So our engagement with police force in terms of building trust is at 2 different levels. One is the national level. And at this level, we are a member of the Police Partner Coordination Group on gender-based violence and child abuse. So this group brings together different stakeholders, including development partners such as UN agencies, FCDO, USAID, but also other CSOs that are working in the area of child protection as well as gender-based violence. It also includes a representative from all the key ministries within the country. And for us, this is a very strategic platform to engage in terms of influencing the change of policies and laws in the country. And related to that is the fact that we bring the technical expertise to the group on how the police force can engage with street-connected children and young persons who are often, like I said, at risk of coming into contact or into conflict with the law. And this group, just to highlight, has several roles, but I'll just mention the few ones. One is advising the police force on the best way to respond to child abuse cases. The other one is sharing information on incidents of abuse or child abuse, but also the group members are responsible for coordinating development of training and training materials. And lastly is collaborating with police officers in raising community awareness towards child protection issues and GBV issues. Next slide, thank you. So at the district level, like I said, our engagement with the police force is at 2 different levels. So at district level, as an organization, we are engaged in building the capacity of the community of police officers. And these are community police officers. So these are the police officers that are responsible in going to community and raising awareness of the community members. But also we build the capacity of police gender desks in areas of safeguarding, particularly building their abilities to conduct child-friendly and non-judgmental interviews, but also how to engage with the street-connected children and youth in a friendly manner. We also involve police officers in our various interventions, as Mindat has highlighted. So on a daily basis, or at least on a weekly basis, we go with police officers to our street outreach activities. We have them in officers that are member of our child support desks, committees. Just maybe to give a brief of what child support desk is. So this is a physical space that is established at the main bus terminal to promote early identification and rescue of children who arrive unaccompanied to various streets. And currently we have set up, in collaboration with the government, we have set up 2 child support desks. One is in Mwanza and one is in Dar es Salaam. But also we have police officers that are community champions. So community champions are community volunteers that are jointly identified by children themselves, but also our frontline workers. And their role is to support identification of new children and provide referral to various services to street-connected children. Our engagement with police officers also is through the quarterly stakeholders meeting, where we convene with various law enforcement agencies, including the police officers. And here we have discussion on various challenges that are experienced by street-connected children and youth, and together we deliberate on the way forward. We also facilitate dialogue sessions between police officers and children and youth. So through our daily session with children or with youth, we invite police officers to come in and share various issues, and also listen from the children what are the issues that they dislike from the police officers. And what we have been able to see, as I'll share in the key achievement, is that the antagonistic or the conflicting relationship between police officers and the beneficiaries we work with is gradually reducing. But we also co-facilitate community dialogues with community police to raise awareness of the community members on child protection issues and how they can report incidents or concerns when they occur. And lastly, we collaborate with police officers to ensure that legal aid is accessible to street-connected children and youth. And here is through either provision of bail or investigating child abuse cases that come into our information. And so we collaborate with the police officers to ensure that thorough investigation is done. Next slide. So some of the key achievements we have been able to see from this collaboration at national, but also at the district level, where we have most of our work, is prominent. First, at the national level is the integration of child protection module in the police training curriculum. So very recently, the police force has agreed to include child protection as one of the modules that the police that are being trained, or the individuals that are being trained to become police officers, will be trained on. But also we are starting to see retention of police officers in their posts, and this fosters specialization of child protection within the police force. The recognition of gender desk also as a distinct unit within the police force structure is also another achievement we have seen. Before that, yes, the police gender desk were established, but they were not recognized as a distinct unit within the police force structure. Another achievement we are seeing is that the police gender and children desk provide a secure and discreet environment for survivors to report incidents of child abuse. And I want to highlight here is specifically in the police and children gender desk, where police officers in those desks have been trained on how to attend to either children or women that are victims of either GBV or sexual or child abuse. But also police officers that are working at children gender desk are closely linked to social welfare officers, either through the police gender desk or through the one-stop centers that Mindat has also highlighted. And this maximizes efficiency and ensures survivors receive timely care and support as well. And specifically to the districts where our work is most prominent, we are starting to see a response to child protection cases that specifically involve street-connected children. We also see increase in mental shift among police officers, particularly ones that engage with in our different interventions towards street-connected children and youth. Like I said, there is also a gradual improvement in relationship between the police officers and the children. These districts where we have most of our work focused in. So despite those achievements, we are also still faced with a number of challenges, some of them at policy or district level. And one of the challenges that has remained constantly here in Tanzania is police landouts. And this, we believe it's because at times the issue of street-connected children is more politicized rather than being approached from a technical perspective, but also because we are unable as an organization to reach to all police officers. Some of the attitude of some of police officers has continued to remain unchanged towards street-connected children and youth. Yet some police stations, even in these districts where we work in, they are yet to establish a gender desk. And so this leads the way the cases, especially the child abuse cases, are being handled and treated. We also have long time taken to investigate child abuse, has at times led to some cases not being taken to court for justice to be obtained. Challenges sometimes a challenge when engaging with. Another challenge that is more at the national level or at policy and law level is the fact that despite the law, especially the law of the child prohibiting police cell to be used as a place for detaining or holding children, still a number of street-connected children continue to be held in this police station who are accused of various juvenile delinquency offenses. And another challenge is the existence of discriminatory laws, as you can all see. And these laws, in one way or another, give power, for example, to the police officers to conduct roundups, but also they justify some of the ways in which police officers treat street-connected children and youth. And the other last challenge is the failure to prosecute and convict perpetrators. We have had incidents where the children could explain or narrate the incident, but even after reporting, nothing is being done. And so as an organization, we believe they need to continue engaging with the police officers. Next slide, please. In terms of building their capacity, but also engaging in these strategic platforms like the one I have highlighted, to continue advocating for the need to first to invest in the police officers in terms of training from the time the individuals are trying to become police officers to when they are police officers, to continue receiving regular training on child protection issues. But also we believe in order for some of the, for example, the legal and policy challenges to be eliminated, there is a need to continue advocating for ratification and domestication of UN General Comment number 21 that will help to challenge conflicting laws within the country. Thank you.
Rose, thank you. That was a real kind of masterclass in trying to take a systemic, really thorough approach to looking at this. It was fantastic. And just to share with people who didn't join the session at last year's Network Forum, we had a great presentation from Bangladesh, which was all about how a team there working with children in a second-tier city in Bangladesh had identified that legally there was provision for children. Points, just as Rose has talked about, it wasn't being put into practice. Now, I'd just say to all the participants, it's a good thing to check in terms of your law. What are the provisions that maybe are in place but not being implemented? We're going to move continents, and we are going to stay with railway children, but I was lucky enough to spend a morning with them recently in one of the big London railway stations. So over to you, Gaynor.
Oh, brilliant. That's great to hear. Thank you so much, and nice to see you all. This is my first call with the consortium, so lovely to see you all and meet people virtually. So my name is Gaynor Little. I live in Liverpool, England. And my role at Railway Children is one of the programme managers for the UK team. So my specialist subject is youth practice. So my role with Railway Children is to make sure that our project workers, our youth practitioners, that we are delivering the best service that we can to the young people who are referred to us by British Transport Police. And throughout the presentation, you might hear me talk about BTP. So when I say about BTP, I'm just referring to British Transport Police, and they are our main mechanism into our work in the UK. So next slide, please. So as Rose and probably other colleagues in the past, probably people on the call have got a great understanding of who Railway Children are. So just a bit of a whistle-stop tour. So we're a charity that's been around for about 25, 26 years. And as Rose has spoken about, our mission is to create sustainable change for children living alone or at risk on the streets, and prevent further abuse and exploitation. And I've worked with Railway Children since 2017. So I managed a project in Liverpool for young runaways, which was funded partly by Railway Children. And then when we were looking at establishing their own direct support in the UK, they asked me to come and join the team, which was a great opportunity, as I've always wanted to work for the organisation. So I'm delighted to be here ever since. So next slide, please. So our work in the UK, so I'll just check my own notes. So our work in the UK started kind of early 2014. So there was the Transport Committee completed a report into safety on the railways, looking at vulnerable children using the network across the UK, and what issues and what concerns were raised for young people's safety. And back then BTP probably had around 7,000 referrals of safeguarding vulnerabilities on the network, and that has increased over the years, and now they've actually receiving just under 10,000 reports of vulnerability regarding young people railway network, so that's under 18s. So back in 2014, it was Baroness Kramer asked BTP and Railway Children to work together to look at the issues and the concerns and to come up with a bit of a solution. And at that time, we were a really critical friend to BTP, and they didn't really understand who these vulnerable young people were. They didn't really know how many there were, and they didn't really know how they were responding as a police force to these vulnerable children and young people. And they didn't really know what the issues were facing, and they didn't have kind of a follow-up loop around, okay, so this young person's been spotted on the network, we've intervened, and they didn't really know what the end outcome was for those young people. They were often referred into local police or social care, but they didn't really have kind of any bookends or any kind of journey knowledge around what had happened to that young person. So we were tasked to work together by the Transport Select Committee to look at what was happening on the network, and together we looked at setting up vulnerability units within the police force, so within BTP, to actually manage and take ownership of these concerns and make sure that there were responses to those young people who were reporting crimes or making allegations of abuse or were hurt, or who were sadly going onto the network to end their lives. So it was a significant piece of work back then. And we also helped them develop a way of reporting these concerns. So it's now called an SVR form, so it's a Safeguards and Vulnerability Report. So we again were pivotal in making sure that they had a recording mechanism to put in place to then record and be able to follow up on the concerns around a number of young people. So that kind of led into 2015, where we launched our Safeguarding Children on Transport partnership with BTP. And then later we relaunched a Safeguarding on Transport, because our work and our communication with the rail industry as well as BTP, it wasn't just children who were vulnerable on the network. And BTP and the rail industry was saying to us, you know, we don't have the resources and the time to specifically just look at children. We need an overall awareness, and no one else was doing that at the time. So as an organisation, we said, okay, then we can look at young people, but a lot of the things that we are suggesting that are implemented will also relate to vulnerable adults as well. And then in 2007, I joined Railway Children as one of their first projects, which was launched in the Northwest. Next slide, please. So the relationship with BTP has developed greatly over the last few years that we've been working together. In partnership, we look at data, we look at stats and information regarding where the hotspots are really of where are the young people who mostly need our support, and that's where our projects are developed. UK, we have our non-school projects, and these are all based in locations where data is telling us that there are the most reports for young people. So we started in the northwest of England, then we launched a project in London, in Leeds, which is Yorkshire, in Birmingham, which is the West Midlands, and then our latest project has been in Glasgow in Scotland. And this is all based around statistical. So you can see how we are sharing information, looking at resources, and BTP are key in helping us establish those projects and those locations. And our only source of referrals is from British Transport Police. So we don't receive referrals from any other agency. They are our sole referrer. So all of the young people that we work with in the UK come from British Transport Police. So they might have been reported to the police by members of rail staff, it could be members of the public, it could be young people presenting themselves, or it could be officers whilst they're out and about on the network. So it gives us a really unique position to, you know, not only work with BTP, but also get a whole industry on board who, you know, we're trying to make committed to safeguarding these young people. So we know now there's just under 10,000 young people in Britain who are reported to be vulnerable, but there's thousands that we don't know of. And it's not that the rail industry is putting those young people at risk. It's almost like a bit of a opportunity to a touch point, really, that they're travelling because they might be trafficked or exploited or missing or in crisis, and that travelling on the network or presenting on the network is given BTP and ourselves an opportunity to intervene and offer support. Thank you very much. So what does our partnership work and look like? So as I've mentioned, we work really closely with BTP units, and the four are based in our project locations as well, and the analysts within the vulnerability unit who are processing referrals regarding vulnerable young people on the network. So we are messaging officers, we are linking in with staff, looking at incidents relating to young people, gathering further information about how we can engage with them, but also passing information back. We work really closely with the county lines team, so that is looking at young people trafficked, delivering, picking up drugs or moving drugs around the country. So we do specific operations with the county lines task force, and also we have something in the UK called a national referral mechanism, which is around young people who are exploited or trafficked. And it's to enable them to be seen as victims of a crime of exploitation and grooming rather than criminals themselves. So we work really closely with the county lines team, ensuring that vulnerability is recognised and NRMs are completed. Again, we work really closely with BTP's neighbourhood policing team. So again, this might be talking to them about familiar faces of young people who are coming into the station. They could be trespassing, causing antisocial behaviour, but linking in saying, okay, well, we haven't had a referral for those. Why don't you refer that young person out? we'll go and see them, we'll give you some feedback. Again, working with the inspectors and sergeants of the different teams, making sure that their staff are aware of the partnership, and we're being involved in joint patrols and awareness days that are actively taking place at the stations. Joint patrols could be things around, say, if there's an event or a festival or anything like that for young people, making sure that officers are seeing young people as vulnerable. They're not just looking at them to see if they're behaving. So again, challenging stereotypes as well. A really important one for us is around training BTP's new recruits. So we have a worker in London who specifically goes to their safeguarding training day and delivers a presentation around railway children. They could be placed, these officers could be placed anywhere across the country. So it gives them a really good foundation of knowledge around what safeguarding is, but then also around us as a charity about what we are doing. So that's a great way to get to staff early on. We have online e-learning for staff, so for officers, but also office-based staff. So again, it's really about informing the whole agency, so the whole BTP as an enforcement agency around what we're doing and about the partnership. We have really regular meetings with the head of public protection, which is where safeguarding and protecting vulnerable young people sits. And we have a single point of contact. So we met with our single point of contact yesterday, looking at how do we get information and good news stories onto their intranet? How do we make sure that we're giving them information and statistics and links into our work to then pass upwards, so that we're kind of working across all levels of BTP. And then some of the nicer things we do. So recently we were invited to the BTP Authority dinner to go and talk to those people who manage BTP and set that expectation, and also being involved in their annual policing reviews, so talking about what works well for us as a charity and for the young people that we represent. We also have a youth participation group who are looking at bits of information for BTP as well, so they're able to give their perspective as well as helping railway children, you know, inform how we practice and how we deliver our service. But there's that mechanism to feed back into BTP as well. And like you were saying in the first presentation, you know, we've got them involved in our Christmas campaign. So, you know, they're on videos, they're on pictures. This picture here is from our latest project launch in Glasgow. So again, we're getting them involved in the press, social media, as well, to make sure that people know, you know, this is a really good partnership and working together. Next slide, please. And then for people who aren't UK based, I thought I'd just put up some pictures to just bring to life, you know, what officers look like, kind of the different things that we do, some of our posts from social media. So you can see at the very bottom left, so this is Nev, a London worker, and this is a group of new recruits that he's been out to train. So again, this will be on social media. We ask BTP again to put this on social media so that there is that real backing of this as a partnership. The next picture up on the left, you've got young people. So we've been supporting BTP with educational sessions in local schools. So again, building that relationship with BTP in the community and then the young people that we work with. There's a number of stalls and events you can see across various stations, again, promoting the partnership, agent off. Just being really visible is really important, over those hearts and minds. And those small conversations sometimes that happen at an informal level can be really important. Just, you know, we actually get out there and engaging with officers, you know, getting them a cup of coffee, you know, feeding back and talking about a young person they might have referred, and a lot of partnership working here with the rail industry as well. And the young person in the middle of the two armed officers with the police dog, she recently met, I'm never good with names, she, I can't remember the lady's name, but she's the highest officer, she's in charge of. So she met this young person at one of our meetings and invited her as a bit of a VIP to come and see one of the patrols that we were doing. And I didn't know that was happening. We went to, I think it was a BTP event in London, and this young person went and represented our youth participation group. So she was invited as a special guest. So officers were really like, oh God, there's a VIP coming and this and that. So, and it was one of our young people, which was just absolutely amazing. So hopefully,
I'm gonna catch you there just because I'm aware you've got such a brilliant set of stories, but I'm aware we're going to run out of time, and I want to make sure we've got a bit of time at the end.
That's fine.
Q&As.
I always do this, so apologies. So very quick.
No, it's brilliant. It's your enthusiasm is infectious.
So challenges and opportunities. So like we've heard before, our challenges are always the stereotypes that you're facing. So it might be officers who've been in post for a very long time, who are very skeptical and have made their minds up about young people. So winning them over can be really, really difficult. And then also BTP has a really young and new recruits are quite young at the moment and life experience. So again, it's enabling them to understand about vulnerability and what that might look like and how to respond to young people's needs. Within BTP, staff are constantly moving. They're constantly being on secondments or covering posts. So once you've built a really great relationship with one officer, they might move. The speed of things always changing is a challenge for us. And BTP and ourselves, we're very different. They're a police force, we're a children's charity. Our objectives are very different. So again, trying to match that up can be a challenge. We're a smaller charity, you know, we're not a national charity with lots of campaigns and a big marketing budget. So again, that can be a challenge. But I think we've really got our feet under the table with BTP. The demands on a small team, and also we're location based. We've got 5 locations, you know, the UK, there's a lot going on and a lot of vulnerable children. And then the next slide, please. And then opportunities, you know, however great you think your partnership is, there's always room to grow. So we want more projects. And again, that comes with how do you balance the funding and that growth. Our opportunities again for government and local government influence. So that's something that we're looking to move forward on. Better promotion. You get so busy and you forget about, okay, when was the last time we actually shared something? You kind of focused on the young people. Feedback loops for referrals can always be improved. And then how do we get out to connect with officers? And making sure that we are keeping them in the loop. And any questions, if there's time.
We'll do questions at the end, Gaynor. We'll do everything together. So I'm going to move us on and stay in. That was brilliant. What a lot of food for thought, like such. And you, so interesting how you echo different parts of the last 2 presentations. So I'm going to hand over now to the University of Southampton, Inji and Yana, who are going to take us working with a very specific group of children and also working with a different set of law enforcement officials. So over to you guys.
Hi, I think Inji is here, but I can't see her. So
hi.
Yes, hi. Ah, there you
Can
are.
you see me?
Yeah. Yes, we are here to present a small project, but hopefully very impactful project that Inji and I are running, involving developing guidelines for the asylum system here in the UK. And I think one of the very unique approaches that we've taken in this project is that we adopted a participatory research method, which means we've worked with the young people themselves who are currently seeking asylum and the charity supporting them to really bring out their lived experiences and the challenges that they face. To hear out how they improved, and we then brought those draft recommendations to others working in the asylum system, involving legal professionals, involving other charities, but also involving representatives from the Home Office. Next slide, please.
So I just want to say before we start the presentation, I'm based in politics, so in the Department of Politics and IR, and Yana is in psychology. So this is kind of an interdisciplinary project. So that's quite important to highlight here. So yeah, over to you, Yana.
Sorry, that's true. And actually, one of the things I wanted to say before talking about this specific project is that it arose out of another project that Inji and I were involved with, where we partnered with a colleague, Helen Stalford in the University of Liverpool and Elaine Chase at the Institute of Education, where we received funding from the ESRC to also do a participatory research project to understand the impacts of COVID-19 delays on young people seeking asylum in the UK. And one of the key messages there that came out was the sort of continued experience of challenges in the host country in the UK while waiting for a decision on their asylum claim. That really impacted significantly the young people's mental health. And so that's what brought Inji and myself to try and work on developing some guidelines to improve the asylum system and to improve the experience of the young people. So this project then was funded by Research England's participatory fund and ran over the first half of this year. And I think I highlighted, it's so central to our approach that we use the participatory message. And unlike traditional methods of research, this is engaging with the beneficiaries of the research. So with the young people and the charities to hear from them what they think is relevant for them and engage them in all the aspects and processes of conducting the research. And so as such, we also actually employed one of the young people that we had worked with as an asylum seeker in the previous project, who since then gained status and was allowed to work. And so he then worked with us as an employed research assistant on this project. And that was, I think, also central to enabling the dialogue with other young people seeking asylum in order to hear their voices and hear their experiences within the asylum system in the UK. Yes, we then ran 2 workshops, one in Southampton initially to draft and hear from relevant varied stakeholders in the asylum process what their experiences and views were of where things work and where they don't work. And so this workshop here in Southampton involved young people seeking asylum, their charity that is supporting them, but also mental health professionals, psychotherapists, other representatives from charities here in the local area that are supporting asylum seeking young people, and also some academics who work in the field. We drew out some initial recommendations, which Inji will come to in a moment. But alongside that activity, we also had our research assistant conduct interviews and conversations with other young people seeking asylum to hear the challenges that they've experienced and what they would like to see could be done better. And once we formulated some initial guidelines based on that data, we then took it to London and hosted a workshop there in order to seek some feedbacks from a broader range of professionals working in the asylum system. And that's where we had representatives from the Home Office, as well as young people seeking asylum and other refugee charities, including from the Refugee Council, for example. Next slide, please. So one of the key messages that came out from our previous project and the conversations we had with the young people was how the time spent here in the UK while waiting for a decision on their asylum and going through the process of the interviews and is, no, sorry, previous slide. I think you've jumped ahead there. Yes, that one, thank you. Is how actually the process here in the UK, where young people should be afforded protection and safety, is still continues to be experienced as traumatizing. And perhaps just to clarify, what is trauma? Trauma is a term that's used very broadly, and I'm sure you all have some understanding and idea of what trauma entails, but we need to recognize that trauma can be quite varied. It can be a one-off event that has a significant impact on an individual. It can be repeated events, and they can be events of all kinds, of an attack or of witnessing violence, but ultimately they adopting here the definition from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Trauma is an event or circumstance that results in physical harm, emotional harm, and or life-threatening harm, which has a lasting adverse effect on the individual's mental, physical, and emotional health, as well as social and or spiritual well-being. Another core element coming out of our research from the previous project and this was that trauma, of course, can, as I said, can mean a number of different things, but it needs to be contextualized in terms of the person's gender, in terms of the person's background, their culture, their nationality, their religion. So trauma can be experienced and understood in quite varied ways, especially when we consider individuals from a diverse set of backgrounds, a diverse set of cultures and religions. Trauma can also, especially in this population, I think many times professionals think about the trauma that was experienced prior to the migration journey, the trauma that is the reason why the young people have left their original countries, their home countries. But trauma can, of course, also arise from the journey, from experiences during the journey that they make, the precarious journey on boats, etc. But also can be experienced and augmented by adverse experiences here in the host country in the UK. Next slide, please. So those adverse experiences here in the UK can entail a number of things, but they can involve, for example, lack of access to any support, to guidance as to what their rights are, or which organizations or individuals or services would be available for them to support them. Lack of access to stable housing, the prolonged waiting for a decision lets young people or anyone seeking asylum, as a matter of fact, living in a state of limbo without any agency, without any control really much over their lives as to what to do and to do something useful. There's also an element of the various services that do exist, even if they're not being accessible is one thing, but they're also not particularly well joined up. And then, of course, lastly, there are significant challenges when young people arrive due to barriers in language, cultural differences, social barriers, discrimination. I mean, one of you earlier talked about the existing stigma that police officers might hold, but border officers and those supposed to support young people seeking asylum often also hold potentially ideas that might not be conducive to a very trusting and supportive relationship. And I think at this point I hand over to Inji.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, we've designed specific guidelines that could inform the substantive asylum interview. For those of you who are not familiar with the asylum process more generally, so this is the main interview that an asylum seeker has to have with a Home Office official, usually a caseworker. And based on the evidence that they provide during this interview, then the Home Office will decide whether they get leave to remain, so a refugee status or humanitarian protection, so on and so forth. And based on our obviously conversations with the young asylum seekers we work with, and obviously the data, we have for this project. It seems that there isn't enough training that is provided to these caseworkers that conduct interviews with asylum seekers about the cultural background of the persons that they interview. And we know that this is quite important, mainly because we work with Albanian asylum seekers, and in their case, culture really informs their experience of trauma, mental health, and then how they experience the asylum process overall, and how they, obviously, the evidence they provide during the interview. And linked to this point, again, the interview process has to be gender sensitive and culture sensitive. The young asylum seekers highlighted the importance of this aspect, particularly the gender dimension. For instance, there is this example. So if you are a female asylum seeker who has experienced rape, so was trafficked and obviously has experienced significant sexual violence, perhaps it would be a good idea not to be interviewed by a male caseworker. And just to highlight, the Home Office, they have their own caseworker guidance that should inform how they conduct this asylum interviews. However, they are not very specific, and they tend to be quite patchy and generic. Another important aspect is the role of trauma, and taking this into account during the interview. And we know, obviously, from psychology that people who have experienced trauma, so they suffer from PTSD, how they recall past information. So their memory is affected by the trauma, and that affects how they recall past experience. And obviously, their storytelling is not that coherent, and that is something that has to be taken into account by those Home Office caseworkers conducting these interviews. Another point that came up was this importance of treating people as humans rather than as numbers. So showing compassion, flexibility, and empathy rather than just following this very systemic, by-the-book type of approach. And this is what has been known here in light of the Windrush scandal, the face behind the case. So seeing them as human beings with a story to tell rather than just as numbers that make up the asylum statistics. And linked to this humane type of approach is, again, this focus on how the interview is being conducted. Some of the young people have highlighted that they feel as being part of an interrogation. So this interrogatory approach, which can be quite demeaning for some of them, and especially if the attitude of the caseworker is hostile, and even the language that they use. So that can have very serious effects on the trauma that they experience of re-traumatization, but also on how they tell their story. And this is quite important to highlight. The substantive interview, I mean, the outcome of that interview is whether that person gets leave to remain or not. And these are some broader principles that we think should inform the asylum process overall. So not only the substantive interview, but the broader asylum process. And I know the previous speakers have highlighted this role of trust, building trust and trustworthiness, so trust relations. And again, I guess trust can be quite a broad term. In our case, the young asylum seekers have highlighted the importance of building trust, for instance, with the interpreters and the translators that obviously have to translate their case. So making sure that they can really trust what they say about their evidence. We've already highlighted this humane approach, so the face behind the case, showing compassion and empathy. Thirdly, this idea of having certainty about what is going to happen. For those of you who are not familiar with the UK asylum system, there is this significant backlog which affects the asylum decisions, and this can be traumatizing, especially for vulnerable asylum seekers, not knowing what's going to happen and just waiting in limbo. What is quite important, as we noticed, is giving this vulnerable community, this vulnerable group of asylum seekers, voice and agency. And this is quite empowering for them. For instance, decisions about their accommodation, sometimes education, is important that they are being consulted, so they have a voice over some of these issues that are quite important for them.
Inji and Jana, I don't want to rush you to the end
Sure.
of the presentation, but we're going to run out of any time to speak.
All right, okay, so I'll just run through
Sorry
very quickly. So yeah, we've already mentioned the cultural sensitivity and gender sensitivity. These are very important aspects of the broader asylum process. Having access to information, some of them really don't know what kind of rights they have and how to access that information. And obviously the English language is a barrier. And the most well, I would say one of the most important aspects is making sure that all the relevant professionals in the asylum system, they are familiar with the trauma that asylum seekers have experienced or are still experiencing. So having this mental health and trauma awareness. Next slide, please. So so those are the principles, the trauma-informed principles. Of course, the question is, how do we put them into practice? So the implementation aspect. And we suggested, based on our conversations with some of the key stakeholders, so the feedback we got from them with respect to these principles, home office case workers should be provided with trauma-informed practice training, and this should be an ongoing process rather than a one-off. Thirdly, it's important that there are clear mechanisms or structures to monitor the extent to which, obviously, home office case workers really implement trauma-informed guidelines in practice. So both in terms of how individual case workers conduct the asylum interview, but also at an organizational level. So how the home office departments, obviously their work is compatible with a trauma-sensitive approach. Next slide, please. And I believe this must be the last one. Yes, as we mentioned, in our research, we always try to make sure that we engage with the beneficiaries of our research, and obviously giving voice to the lived experience of those beneficiaries. We think, based on the feedback we got, the same should happen at the home office level. So making sure that those who monitor the implementation of the trauma-informed practice, but also those who deliver the training, should be the ones that have experienced trauma as part of the asylum process in the UK. There should be more collaboration amongst professionals, so sharing of the knowledge and the best experience. And I guess very importantly, but also perhaps very achieved in practice, trying to change the organizational culture of some of those key organizations, such as the Home Office, obviously in order to allow for the effective implementation of these trauma-informed principles, trauma-informed practice principles. Because most often, from what we've noticed, they tend to pay lip service to these principles rather than actually implementing them effectively in practice. So I think that was the last slide. The next one. Yeah, thank you very much. We look forward to your questions.
Thank you. And I am aware that there was a little change of tack there, but as we heard yesterday from Cedric, who spoke looking at justice with children globally, the interface between children on the move and street-connected children, there's an enormous overlap of those populations of children. And we were really excited to hear about this work from Southampton University, which brings together a lot of the practice we hear about working with the police as well as the work that's been developed separately of how do you take trauma-informed approaches with all adults who work with children on the street. So brilliant to get these insights into that presentation. We've got a little bit of an opportunity. We've got 8 minutes for Q&A. I'd love to hear from people in the room in terms of if they've got specific questions for our panelists. And there's a lot of content there. Certainly lots of food for thought, or any specific things they'd like to share. So we'd love to hear from the room. I may be missing, there's been quite a lot in the chat, but I haven't caught any questions. It'd be great to hear from the participants. Let's give it a moment. I know people sometimes need a little bit of time to get that first question out. I can see something from Jana, so why don't you kick us off?
Great. Yeah, my question is actually going back to the first presentation by Amani. And it was a really interesting, all presentations were really interesting, and there were a lot of common themes. But one thing that you were talking about was that you were training or providing some training for the police to better their understanding of street children and to improve empathy. And I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about how you achieve that you reduce maybe, unconscious even sort of perceptions of street children. How do you change? What kind of work do you do to really change their perception and their stigmatizing views of street children?
Yeah, thanks, Jana. Obviously, very important question. Also an area that we are still exploring ourselves. So a lot of the training that we've done so far has been during community engagement workshops. So for a much broader group of people, not just police. And it's only now that we are actually targeting or trying to see how can we target the police force more specifically. But a lot of it is related to explaining some of the realities that these children come from, that it's not been their sort of free choice to go to the street and end up in this reality, that it's also often not their free choice, even though obviously they have some level of agency, but it's not their free choice to maybe not leave the streets behind again. It is about really painting that entire picture of where they come from, what the dynamics are that are involved in them ending up on the streets, what the dynamics are that are involved in them staying on the streets, what the dynamics are in terms of sort of street survival, and then some of these children getting engaged in some petty crime, burglary, stealing stuff, smoking, marijuana, sniffing glue, etc. The reality of the police is that they often just see that outside and react to that, and they never really see the inside and understand the dynamics. So a lot of it is about trying to make them understand those dynamics, sometimes by also inviting children in conversations with the police. Yeah, so that it's not, oh, there is some social worker from Amani telling us that this is the reality, but they hear it firsthand from the children themselves. So I think those are a couple of the things that we try to do and that so far have proven powerful.
Wonderful, thank you. Inji, it looks like you've got a hand up, and other participants, please feel free to put your hands up. Inji, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the fascinating presentations. It was really great finding out about the amazing work that you are doing with street children. I just had a quick question, which I think is linked to all the presentations. How long does it take to build trust? I mean, this is one of the key, obviously, concepts and obviously objectives, but how long does it take and the challenges you face? And just a quick question for Gaynor, if I may. So the street children that you support, so do you also have asylum seekers, former asylum seekers who end up on the street that you support or help? Thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question briefly, Inji? So when you say how long it takes to build trust, is that for our street outreach workers, or is that between
between street children and the police force, for instance, because I thought that was the main objective, to make sure that they work together, and obviously children are being helped.
Yeah, sorry, Gaynor, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. So for the first question, so when we talk about children on the streets in the UK, it's probably a little bit different than our partners in India and Africa. So children in the UK, we have very few children who we class as homeless and who are street-based, because we have child protection services, social care in place. So that's not really a norm. So for the children that we refer to, when we say children on the streets, it's sometimes those children who are sofa surfing, who maybe are pushed or pulled away from home, so they could be groomed and staying with perpetrators, or people who were exploiting them. And a lot of the time, missing children we will class, who are probably not at home and their location isn't known, or they're not where they should be based. So we work probably more with missing and runaway children than street-based children, or children living on the streets. And then the question about building up trust, I think that's a lovely thing about railway children and our work in the UK, is that we recognise that takes a substantial amount of time to build up that trusting relationship. So, you know, we don't have a strict programme of we need to achieve this within a certain time limit. Oh, they've not engaged for 3 sessions, that's it, we're closing the case, or there's no further action. We're really lucky that we are able to offer that patience and that time, which I think sometimes a lot of services aren't able to do because of funding constraints, or, you know, wanting fast outcomes. But we know that to achieve and make lifelong change, you have to give that time, and children they'll test you, they'll push you away to see if you'll still be there. So for us, it's really important to show that we are.
I wanted just to share a question that's come up in the chat that's come to me, which is, and it may be that we put it here and we follow it up separately, but it was around, what about gay children facing persecution from families, the threat of conversion therapy, including in the UK, but elsewhere, threats from religious communities, threats to life and physical threats. This often feels overlooked. And I would say absolutely, and it can be a real risk factor. I think we had some interesting presentations, input yesterday around recognition of the threats to boys, particularly in terms of rape being recognised. And I think that comes up as well in that overlook of sexual orientation and the risks it presents in the justice system. I want to keep going, and we could have such a good chat, and I'm very happy for maybe if there are a few people who want to stay on the end, but I want to formally close this because we always try and stick to timings. What a brilliant set of inputs, just such a lot of thought-provoking content and material, and I think lots of learning that we can continue to do together as a network, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to work on this agenda. So thank you to brilliant presenters, and just to say that our next session today will be changing topic and doing a session on a positive parenting project in Kenya. So that will be coming up today at 1:30 p.m. But really just a big thanks to our presenters from Amani, from Railway Children Tanzania, Railway Children UK, and from the University of Southampton. I thought it was a very, very rich session, and I really appreciated it. And thanks to all our participants for joining us. Anyone who would like to stay on the session, if there's some particular things you want to follow up, I'm happy to stay on for another 5 minutes because I could feel there was some stuff bubbling up, but formal close to this session now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I think from my perspective, I think, you know, this overlap, because I think in many countries, there is this overlap between children on the move and street connected children in its broad definition. And I think the issue of kind of seeing law enforcement also a little bit more broadly is helpful. And I've certainly been struck by this kind of overlap between people bubbling up from our network, people asking us for advice on taking more trauma-informed approaches, and then, you know, you coming at it from that very specific angle. So I found that really helpful. And Gaynor, Mindheart and Rose, just what fabulous presentations. Daniel, I'm so sorry we couldn't hear from you.
Oh, no, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was lovely to be here. Obviously, 12 minutes, 15 minutes is very short. So one of the slides that we skipped for time is that we hope, as Amani, somewhere in January, February, to organize like a 2-hour workshop on this same topic, how as frontline workers working with street-connected children, can we slowly but surely build that positive collaboration with the police. And I know Amani, we're struggling with it. I know everyone is struggling with it, but I'm sure together we can learn from each other and find better ways to move forward. So anyway, I'll be in touch with Pia to see how we could take this forward.
Absolutely. Mindheart, we would love to, you know, if we can help co-host or whatever it is. So very, very happy to pick it up. I think having more deepening these sessions, so we keep the dialogue coming, you know, we don't just have a once a year network forum, but we keep some of these strands of dialogue happening. Yeah. Any of the folks who stayed on, do you want to come on camera? Did you have any questions you were particularly, or anything you wanted to add to the discussion?
So I just wanted to comment on the question from Ingi. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, on how long does it take to build trust? From our experience, I'm not sure you can quantify the time, but what I want to say is that it needs to be intentional in terms of how we engage with the police officers, but also routinely. And apart from that, in terms of how we measure whether we have been able to build trust between the police officers and the children and youth we work with, is we have quarterly feedback mechanism where we go to either the children or the youth and we ask them their experience on different areas. So one of the areas could be how they experience their engagement with the police officers, and we hear from them. And I just want to highlight, in 2018, I think, or 2019, we did a study in collaboration with Consortium for Street Children. And one of the areas we are looking at was the experience that the children go through in the hands of the police officers. And the findings were, most of the findings were negative. But this year, during the International Day for Street Children, we asked children who do they feel they keep them safe while they're on the streets. And it was interesting for the children, for example, to highlight some of the people they feel safe around are the police officers. So that somehow justify the work that we are doing with the police officers in terms of building the relationship with the children.
Thank you.
That's really inspiring, Rose.
I had a quick question just about.
Hello?
Is that Santigi?
Yeah, that's me.
Go ahead, Santigi.
I just wanted to add into this area of the relationship building and also with the police. And then, so with regards to that also, we as civil society organization working for street children, we need to also follow up with government rules and regulations in terms of building relationship with the ministry, because with the ministry and of children and Minister of Gender and Children's Affairs, and also the police officers in charge of certain districts or community where you're working. Because whenever you connect with them, you know, you make the relationship more stronger. Then whenever there is an issue with regards to a child, they will get onto you. But sometimes one-off programs that we do, you know, it does not help much. It helps to create awareness, but sometimes awareness comes when it's continue to, you know, to solidify and continue to create those information. And sometimes funding is difficult, but so the relationship you are building, you know, the relationship you build with those authorities also help you to have influence in them in terms of decision making of how they treat children. So for me, on our own side, we should also work very closely with the ministry. We should also work very closely with the departments and agencies, especially with government, because most time, they use terminologies, they will use other kind of rules, and it's very difficult for you to argue them to the latter. So the best thing is to create a good relationship with them. Therein, when they see you or they mention you, they will start to, because most time when something happens, they will just order from the above.
Thanks, Santigi. Yeah, I think it goes to my heart.
Order from above. You can't reach this order from above. Yes, so it's so difficult. So the best thing is for us to communicate and to also build very strong relationship with the authorities in charge of that particular community. I think that will really help, because already we know how to build the relationship with the children, how to build the relationship with the street children and community people. But the authorities they take over everything. So you have to build trust. You should not go with that kind of too much of policies as a start, but you go, in a gentle way, creating a relationship, and then you start from there, building up for them to know the rules and regulation laws that will enable them to protect those children. I think that's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Santigi. Point really well made. Yeah. Any final comment? I think we should sort of close up now. We've done an extra 10 minutes, but any last final comment that anyone is burning to share with the group?
I was just going to ask.
Hello?
Gaynor, go ahead.
Sorry, quick question. I was just going to say, have you been able to share your research with the Home Office and how they kind of taken that feedback?
Is that for myself and?
Yes, sorry,
yes. Yeah. Yes, so the London workshop we invited, I think there were 3 Home Office officials, but they are not the ones doing the interviews. They are the ones in charge. I mean, at least one of them, this mental health group, which tries to to create a trauma-sensitive environment for their own staff. Yeah, so we are drafting a report now based on those findings, and we want to share that with the Home Office. I mean, some of the people we already know there, but I think, as I said, it is challenging in the sense that at the moment there is a lot of political pressure from above, and for them, sometimes they need to prioritize things. But at least there are some pockets of best practice, I would say, some officials within the Home Office who are engaged with us, and they understand that by using these trauma-informed practice guidelines would also be good for their own work, would be more efficient, and it would be a kind of a win-win situation, as it were.
Thanks, Inji. I'm just going to go to Kelvin Mindheart, because I'm aware that we haven't heard from it, and then I'll leave you to finish us up. Yeah. Kelvin, coming to us from Kenya.
Yeah, thanks, Pia. For me, I would just like to comment on what we discussed from our last session last year in the network forum about the police. It was really beneficial for us. We have tried to coordinate between the children department and the police officers, the police department. It has really beneficial, and it has assisted us in transforming the lives of street kids in the streets, because as our concern last year in December, they were really being caned up, and they were put in remand homes. They were really harassed. But after our conference that we held, we tried to approach through the children department, and it has really brought an impact for us in Bungoma, and the children department is really working with the police very well. Thanks a lot for the session.
Well, another little bit of array of positive hope and inspiration. Romain, can you do like 10 seconds? I can see your hands up and we haven't heard from you, and then I'll pass on to Mindheart.
Okay, thank you very much, Pia. Yeah, just in regards to the question that was raised earlier by Jess, that is, how do we handle stigmatization? How are we approaching that? Well, the basic methodology we've been using in Cameroon is multiplying community services, where it's kind of an open door, an opportunity for community members to get to meet the street children. Not necessarily as volunteers, but let them just come, let them get to meet the children in a safe environment where they feel safe, and then they get to really see that these are just children like our own children home, who are being stubborn like every other child. And then the stigma about them that they are all criminals, they are all thieves, and they cannot change, that begins to reduce, and they can go back to their communities and spread the news. And we also give opportunities for volunteers, those who are serving with us, to share their testimonies, be it online, on-site, during conferences, And then children who have been with us for more than a year, they also have opportunities to share their stories, and then people can really get to see that there is hope. Thank you. I think I'll just do it.
Thanks, Romain. That was a really lovely input to us. Mindheart, last words from you.
Yeah, so what I would like to do for the people who are still here is share my screen again, and then for you to reflect on everything that you've heard during these presentations, from Amani through the 2 railway children presentations and the Southampton Policy one. And just, if you can, type in 1 or 2 things that you would like to start doing after whatever you listened to, or what you would like to start doing differently. Yeah, so I think here is a question on your screen, I hope. What will be your next action? And I just invite everyone, just type it into the chat. Let's run that for 5 minutes and then close today's session. So it's really about what is it that you learned and that actually can help your practice. Yeah, so consider the conversations in relation to my wider research. Keep sharing the learning from this session with other network members. I'd like to train the police officers. I mean, these are all great contributions. And the good thing is they're recorded. So 6 months from now, we can ask you, did you do it? Yeah, engagement plan with the British Transport Police. Let's get another 3 or 4 or 5, and then we'll call it a day, at least for this session. More efficient trust building initiatives, yes, because often, as was hinted already, it takes a long time. Yeah. Let's have another 2.
Just while these are building up, can I just ask, is there any relevance to the colours of the different bricks?
No, there shouldn't be. That's random.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Translate guidelines into concrete actions. See an annual review of child protection issues in the district that we work in. I mean, I love these ideas, and they're also closely related to today's discussion. So I can only wish everyone great success in taking this forward. And hopefully when we meet again, whether it's during that 2-hour workshop or next year's network forum, we can update each other on a few more positive successes. Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful. Thanks for the final interactive set of bricks and actions. That's great. We will share that out with the pack and make sure that that gets shared out. And thank you all. Thanks for the people who wanted to stay on and keep this conversation going. I think that we must continue collaborating on this. Thanks all. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you. Nice meeting you all.
Yes. Bye.
Thanks.